Any of you familiar with the Broadway musical A Chorus Line? At least maybe heard of it, know a little bit about it. One of the longest running musicals on Broadway. And the idea behind it is it's all about being a performer and trying to make it. And there's a song called I Hope I Get It. And in that song, it's these actor-dancer types who are all trying out. It's kind of a group audition, and they're all learning this dance. There's a guy teaching them this dance, and throughout the dance, there's also a song, and the different actors who are auditioning sing these parts of the song. And in it, one of them says, "Who am I anyway? Am I my resume? That's a picture of a person I don't know." And it really strikes me that he asks that question, who am I anyway? Trying to figure out, is this the person I am, this person who's up here auditioning with these people? Am I somebody else? How do I fit in? Most of you know I used to work as an actor. Third career pastor. A lot of my friends are second career pastors, but I added one. Third career pastor, and my first career was as an actor. And when you work as an actor, everything depends on your resume. Your resume as an actor is one page. One page, that's it. The front has pictures of you, along with your vital statistics. Height, weight, hair color, eye color, clothing size, that kind of stuff. And on the back is a list of what you've done as an actor. They're not terribly interested in what most resumes would be. Education, those sorts of things. It's fine if you want to put it down, but that doesn't terribly interest them. They want to know what you've done as an actor. And if your resume doesn't grab them immediately, you won't even get a shot at an audition. So I want to show you my acting resume. There it is. That was my acting resume from when I was doing that. You can see the top left. If you look really closely, you can tell I'm wearing a Cardinal baseball hat. Even then, I was trying to keep the spirit alive. But the nice product placement with the soda, which that soda doesn't even exist anymore. Then down below it, we've got the kind of more serious and yet slightly comical businessman. Top right, you've got another product placement, little thing of Alka-Seltzer in my hand that's holding the camera and the cup of Alka-Seltzer. Hard to see, but there's actually even a piece of wedding cake sitting on top of the camera. So you've got the harried wedding photographer who's done and now needs the Alka-Seltzer. Down below is actually from a play I was in. Played an 85-year-old dead guy who died before the play started and was dead the entire play. My headshot in the middle, as they call it. So that's my resume. That's what mine looked like. I've changed just a little bit since 1983. Would you agree? I don't quite look like that anymore. But the question that gets asked in that song from A Chorus Line is appropriate. Who am I anyway? Am I my resume? Now, like he said, for most of you, these pictures are a person you don't even know. I've shown these pictures to people who have said, "Who is that?" They just, it looks so different, you don't even know the person who's in there. Well, today we're going to continue our current series. 3 simple questions, 3 simple rules. And I've said before, they're based on 2 tiny little books by a retired United Methodist bishop named Reuben Job. And although the books are tiny, they are absolutely packed. And this series is designed to help us establish a foundation between us and God. And then we're going to look at tangible ways that we can strengthen that foundation. So last week we looked at who is God, and today we're going to look at who am I. Okay, honey, you want to kick it over. There you go. And along the way we're going to look at 3 different scriptures today that portray us as humans in 3 distinctly different ways. The first one I want to share with you is from the book of Job, from the Old Testament, 14th chapter. And it has a rather bleak view of humanity. Hear these words. Mortals, born of women, are of few days and full of trouble. They spring up like flowers and they wither away. They are like fleeting shadows, they don't endure. At least there's hope for a tree. If it's cut down, it will sprout again and its new shoots won't fail. Its roots may grow old in the ground and its stump may die in the soil. Yet around the scent of water it will bud. It will put forth shoots like a plant. But man dies and is laid low. He breathes his last and is no more. As the water of the lake dries up or a riverbed becomes parched and dry, so he lies down and doesn't rise. Till the heavens are no more, people won't awake or be roused from their sleep. It was a busy Friday before Christmas at O'Hare Airport. And at a crowded Delta ticket counter, there was an agent who was doing his best to politely process each passenger quickly as they made it up to the desk. Well, there was a man at the end of a rather long line, and he was getting very frustrated about having to wait. And he finally couldn't take it anymore. He marched up around the line to the desk, and he demanded to receive his boarding pass. And the ticket agent said to him, "Sir, as you can see, there are many passengers ahead of you. I'm doing my best to process all of the passengers as quickly as I can. I'm afraid you're just going to have to wait like everybody else." And the man turned just beet red and he screamed, "Do you know who I am?" And the ticket agent very calmly picked up the microphone for the PA system that went throughout the airport. And he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, there's a man here at the Delta ticket counter who doesn't know who he is. If anyone can identify this man, please step forward and do so. Thank you." So Job's view of life that I read a second ago, pretty bleak, pretty dark, not much hope in that. You see, sometimes we can, in our confusion and in our tension and in our hurry of life, we forget who we really are. We lose track of that. In a world darkened by confusion and deception and dysfunction, it's easy to forget who we are. We struggle to remember that one thing. We struggle to hang on to who we are in this age of instant and constant communication. It's easy to attach labels to each other. It's real easy to label somebody instantly. It's really hard to remove that label once it has been put on you. It's often hard for us to look beyond the labels that we give other people and see an actual beloved child of God. You see, when we forget who we are, we begin to see others as less than that, less than beloved children of God. And so we not only fail them when we do that, but we give up our own identity as children of God when we do that. Now let's look at a passage from the New Testament that has a much different view of what people are like. It's from the Gospel of Matthew, starting with the 16th verse. And in it, Jesus hits fairly hard about what he says. He says, "Are you still so dull? Don't you see that whatever enters your mouth goes into your stomach and out of your body? But the things that come out of a person's mouth come from their heart. And these defile them. For out of the heart comes evil thoughts, murder, and adultery, and sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, and slander. That which defiles a person." So Jesus is pretty specific here. Very specific about, he says, what goes in and then comes out of your mouth. You have to pay attention to that because it defines who you are. Because we're surrounded by violence and hate in this world. All you gotta do is turn on the news and that's almost all you see. But I'm convinced that deep in our hearts we know that there's a better way to live. And we want to follow that better way to live. And how do we do that? Well, we start doing that when we remember who God is, which we talked about last week, and when we remember who we are. Because when that happens, we see ourselves as God sees us. And then we're able to start actually seeing other people as God sees them as well. Names are a huge part of who we are. Names help define us. The Bible's full of that. Somebody, what does their name mean? And it really helps define them as a person. So my question is, do you know your name? Hopefully you know the name you're thinking of, because we all have the names that were given to us by our parents. My brother's getting in the middle of getting a passport. And he called me yesterday, I think, and he needed a couple of specifics on our parents. And I'm the trustee of my dad's estate, so I've got all the paperwork. And so I was looking at death certificates from my parents, and I was reminded of their names. Not just the name that I called them, but I was reminded of their full name. So we all have a name our parents gave us. But we also have names that other people have given us over the years. Because a name rooted in family history can help us grow new branches on that family tree. But a derogatory name, a negative name that we've been keeps us trapped in one place our whole lives. We struggle to get out of that and shed that label that we've been given. A name that's been stuck on us because of one single event or one single experience can permanently shape our lives. And it can do it for the good and it can do it for the bad. So our public names, the names that we call each other and the names that we were given, those are public knowledge. We all know them. But I'm convinced that we also have what I would call a soul name. Who we are according to God. And maybe it's not a specific name as much as an overall thought of who we are according to God. Well, how do you find out that? How do you find your soul name? Well, you don't find it by looking inward. A friend of mine calls that navel gazing, because you stand like this and stare at your navel. You don't find it that way by being fixed on yourself. You find it by throwing yourself into the needs of other people. The needs of other people. You let loose your compassion on the world. And while you're throwing yourself into the needs of others, you are also throwing yourself into your passion as well. Passion. Because passion, when it's connected with compassion, reveals your soul name. It reveals who God sees you as. Read a story about two businessmen who were on an airplane flying to a very important meeting. And sitting across the aisle from them was this kind of raggedy old man with a shaggy beard and tattered clothes. And the two men were being kind of rude. They were telling jokes to each other, crude jokes about bums and tramps and kind of ratty people. And they were looking at him every time they did it and kind of referencing him and laughing about it. Well, they got to their destination and they got to their meeting, and it was only then that they found out that this tramp who was sitting across the aisle from them was not only a world-class scholar, but he was the keynote speaker at the meeting that they were attending. And of course they were appalled then, because they realized what they had done, and they went up to him during the break and they asked if he remembered them, and he assured them that he remembered them. And they apologized for what they had said, and he said, "It's not my forgiveness that you need, but it's the forgiveness of all the common people out there that you clearly hold in such disdain." So do you throw yourself into your passions? Statistics say if you want to succeed in a passion that you have, whatever it is, you have to be willing to invest 10,000 hours. You heard that right, 10,000 hours in the practice of that passion if you want to move it from pastime to success. That's how much effort it takes to bring your passion to light. So I wonder, what if we stockpiled, beginning now, what if we stockpiled our hours of compassion and passion in an effort to discover what our soul name is, in an effort to discover who it is that God sees each one of us as? You see, we're not just given our inheritance from God because of our birthright, or because of our place of origin, or because of our wealth, or our gender, or our occupation. That's not why we get an inheritance from God. But instead, as children of God, we all have our own identity. We all have a place in God's family simply because we are His. We are the holy dwelling in which God chooses to live. Think about that. In the Old Testament, it was the tabernacle. It was the place that held the Ark of the Covenant. Those were the places God dwelt, tangible places. But when Jesus died on the cross, the curtain that separated the people from God's dwelling was torn in half. And now we are the dwelling in which God lives, chooses to live. We are made in God's image, and God chooses us to be His own. And so when we share God's grace, and when we share God's mercy and compassion and forgiveness and love, then suddenly we are acting like children of God. I want to share one last scripture with you. In John 15, starting with the 13th chapter, it's a very positive scripture about who we are and how we fit into God's larger plan. Hear these words. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants because a servant doesn't know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything I learned from my Father, I've made known to you. You didn't choose me. I chose you. And I appointed you so that you might go out and bear fruit. Fruit that will last. And so that whatever you ask in my name, my Father will give you. What a powerful thing that is to hear that you didn't choose me, Jesus says. I chose you. Before you were born, Jesus chose you. Tomorrow is Martin Luther King's birthday. For a lot of people, it just means a day off. For some people, it doesn't even mean that. But for a lot of people, it's just a day off. But Martin Luther King had a dream. Maybe his most famous speech, he talks about that. He had a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners would be able to sit down together at a table of brotherhood. He had a dream that one day his 4 children would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. He believed that through faith, people could turn mountains of despair into mountains of hope. See, I'm convinced that we are better people because the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream. So my question to you this morning is, what do you dream about? What is your dream? I have a dream. I have a dream that this church will continue to move forward to be the forefront of a movement to revitalize the spiritual nature of this community. That we would continue to find ways to ease suffering and deepen faith in the people who live in St. Joseph. And we're already doing that in all sorts of ways in this church. But I wonder how many more ways might we do it? I have a dream that churches around the country would finally and completely shed the last vestiges of that desire to cling to what we've always done and instead commit ourselves to growing the church so that we can fully and completely reach our mission for God. That we will soon be involved in ministries that right now we haven't even dreamt of. Because the bottom line is we no longer follow Jesus when we refuse to walk as he walked. When we refuse to obey his command to love him and to love each other. But when we pray and when we worship together, then we become equipped with a vision to see others as they truly are and as God sees them. Our identity is not something that we create. It's something that's given to us by God, who made us, who leads us, who sustains us, who loves us. And we discover the full meaning of who we are when we attempt to grow in our relationship with God. And we do that through prayer and through worship. Because then a transformation happens that enables us to be intimately involved with the one who gave us life in the first place. And it is prayer and it is worship that helps us know who we are because it brings us closer to God. And what a marvelous way that is to live. Would you pray with me?